this is where it's important to me. You should be thinking about doing this the first moment you get the phone call from that client on that case. Is this a summary judgment case? Start thinking about it. Does the plaintiff tell a summary judgment story? There's lots of cases where plaintiffs can get summary judgment. I'm going to go through them all: pedestrian knockdowns, VTL violations, etc. Left turn cases are a big one that people I see far too often not make the motion when they can win it. But you start thinking about it from the moment of the initial intake. You get the phone call from the client. You start thinking, does this sound like a summary judgment motion? My client was driving straight with the green light. Other vehicle coming in the opposite direction makes a left-hand turn directly into my client's path. Accident ensues. My client's very seriously injured. Now, in that case, what's going to be the defense to that case? Some kind of comparative negligence. Plaintiff wasn't looking where he was going. Plaintiff was speeding. But start thinking about it at the beginning. How do I address those issues from the moment of my initial client intake? Witnesses. What do the witnesses say? Do the witnesses say, I forgot who said it earlier, I always like to have my investigator, if I can do it myself, get a witness statement in an affidavit. Now, I have a summary judgment exhibit. Whatever exhibit on my list is, I have an exhibit from a witness. The plaintiff was traveling in a straight line, doing the speed limit. By the way, has anyone here ever had a plaintiff or defense attorney who was not doing the speed limit? I mean, everyone who's done, what was the speed limit? 30. I was doing 30. You know, what was it, 35? I was doing 35. You know, I mean, listen, I drive. I'm doing 5, 10 miles over the speed limit since I'm 17 years old. But I've never had a witness at a deposition who wasn't doing the speed limit. Anyway, just an aside. But be prepared. Get the witness statements from the beginning. Have that prepared. The plaintiff was driving straight ahead. The plaintiff had the right of way. Now, this applies for defendants in summary judgment motion cases as well. But oftentimes with the defendant, the plaintiff's already had first crack at the witnesses. All right? Plaintiff has had the witnesses, had the police report, had all that stuff in the standard auto case before the defense attorney even knows the case exists. So while the plaintiff has that advantage, secure those good statements. Photos of the scene. Excuse me. Importantly, find out from your client. Make sure your client wasn't talking on a cell phone, had an earpiece in, texting, doing anything stupid that would preclude a motion for summary judgment. An important area in terms of pedestrian knockdowns, and I see this happen, I talk to people about this all the time. Your client, the plaintiff, is crossing the street in the crosswalk with the walk sign, excuse me. Where was the plaintiff looking at the time of the accident? Straight ahead. Straight ahead? Straight ahead. I was watching the walk sign to make sure I had the right of way. You weren't looking around? Nope. I was focused on that walk sign. You didn't look to the left or to the right? Nope. I was watching the walk sign because I was looking straight ahead. And attorneys will prep their clients to say this prior to the deposition. I want to slap them. You can't be looking straight ahead, fixated with tunnel vision on the walk sign, because the plaintiff has a duty to see what there is to be seen. You can't just be like walking straight ahead. You got to look. Hey, there's a bus coming. I wonder if he's going to stop. You know, you got to be looking. If you have that plaintiff testify, I can guarantee you, you're going to lose the summary judgment motion. You're going to be found comparatively liable as a plaintiff, because you are supposed to look around. I'm not saying looking around doing this. I'm just looking around like a normal person who walks down the street, not walking with their phone, texting like this, looking around, and especially not looking at the walk sign to the exclusion of everything else. When you do the initial investigation, in preparing for the summary judgment motion, police report, 911 tapes, if there's an accident investigation, if it's a serious accident in the city, get the accident investigation file. There'll be measurements. There'll be things that you can use, exhibits. Pictures worth 1,000 words. If you can have an AIS that shows the bus driver, the car, whatever, made a left-hand turn directly into the path of an oncoming vehicle, and you can see that they draw the little diagrams with the cars and everything, that is gold. And if you're arguing in front of Judge Schmidt in Brooklyn, make sure you use his models. Anyone who knows what I'm talking about, he's got little cars on his table that when you argue a summary judgment motion, he'll tell you, take your cars, take his cars. He has a little school bus, he's got a dump truck, he's got everything. Show him this is how the accident occurred. And if that matches up with the police report, you're gold, okay? surveillance cameras. Very important. Had a case where the video camera caught a cab driver swerve around a car that was stopped to make a left-hand turn, lose control, and drive into a loading dock and hit somebody who was behind the closed doors of the loading dock and hurt the person. Cab driver said, my brakes stopped working, I lost control of the car. Well, the surveillance camera showed the guy who was basically trying to beat the light as it was turning from yellow to red. He went around the guy, he clipped a parked car, and crashed into the loading dock. The case settled shortly after that videotape was disclosed, and the summary judgment motion was pending, okay? DMV hearings, very important. If there's a death case or there's any kind of evidence of a DMV hearing, get those transcripts if you can, okay? They're not always easy to get, but you try to get them. Obviously, the MV-104 for the defendant. A lot of times the defendant will file the MV-104 or will have he works for a company, his boss or someone else will provide it. There'll be statements in there that you can use. All of this is an eye for, if I'm going to make this, well, you're going to do it for your trial anyway, but for the motion for summary judgment, you're trying to get these things in admissible form that you can attach to your motion papers. People mentioned earlier the black box. I don't know if you guys know this. There's black boxes in a lot of cars today, not just buses and trucks. I have a case where there was I forgot, it was a 2006 Corvette, where it was a New Jersey accident, where the New Jersey police hooked up the black box and got all the data readings, and it was a left turn case. The driver said he was stopped at the time of the impact. He turned left in front of my client who was on a motorcycle. The driver said, I was stopped at the time and the motorcycle was speeding and ran right into me. I pulled out the black box data. His attorney hadn't prepped him on it. I showed it to him. I said, it says you were doing 15 miles an hour at the moment of impact when the black box stopped working. Do you have any reason to disagree with that? The guy's face went white. He's like, no. His attorney's like, objection. What are you objecting for? This was the police report that was turned. You exchanged this with me. You gave this to me. You didn't read it? You didn't know? He goes, I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, well, that's not my fault. He's doing 15 miles an hour at the moment of impact. Summary judgment motion was made. This case settled. Okay?